The DMC tax, right?
Yeah,
The transit tax.
That we use, and better than half, around half of that goes toward the $3 million commitment per year for transit-oriented projects within the city of Rochester.
Oh, so that is restricted.
Yeah, it's restricted.
Ah.
So we hand that over to the city, and then based on the studies that are going on, depending on what happens, that money goes into the fund to help both pay for the consultants that are ongoing now, and then ultimately the projects that are presented. In addition to $3 million, according to the legislation, we can leverage $7.5 million from the state to augment that money to go toward transit because it's expensive. And then another source is Federal Transit Authority at the federal level that has money typically to allocate toward transit type things, bus routes, light rail, people mover systems, whatever you come up with. The state has dedicated money for sales tax on gasoline and a few other sources that are constitutionally dedicated. But when you look at how inflation has impacted that over the years, we don't have anywhere near the resources that we used to have, and there's been no expansion of that. So this year there are bills, but again, it's not an increase of the dedicated. It's taking things that have gone into the general fund that they're talking about taking out. Some of the surplus will go toward transportation. And the problem that that we see, and the reason you get a little bit concerned about that, is it's not dedicated. It's part of the general fund. And in the future years, based on priorities, you never have any guarantees that that funding will continue. Okay? It's written in the legislation, but that can change. Whereas gas tax and some of the other motor vehicle sales tax all is constitutionally dedicated, but it just doesn't keep up because we have not had the wherewithal to do anything different with that funding. So we get stuck between a rock and a hard place. When this city has to support a main economic driver, I mean, it's everybody, not just Mayo, but the inbound commute is 40,000 to 45,000 people. Outbound commute is about 18,000 people. And if you don't provide a safe and efficient system for that many people to come in, what happens? Right? They look at the system and say, I have to support it. There's areas I have to expand it. I have to keep it growing, and I have to maintain it. So another factor, a big factor, when I came on the board in 2003, I think a mile of bituminous overlay, asphalt, cost somewhere between $60,000 to $100,000 a mile. So then over time, and especially in the recession and the oil run-up, when oil got to about $140 a barrel, that price jumped to about $400,000 to $410,000 a mile. Oil is the biggest driver in bituminous.
100%.
So you say, okay, time goes on, you live with that, you do less. We try to take some money out of the budget, but that's almost impossible because of the cuts we've gotten from the state. And public works is one of the largest discretionary, probably the largest discretionary thing that we have to deal with in the budget. So we kind of went after them when things got really hard. As oil started to come down, and now as it's come down near upper 40s and 50, so you'd say, okay, if the main driver, and I know labor and equipment and so on is also part of it, but the main driver has now dropped 2/3, right, of your inputs for that. Well, the price now per mile has dropped all the way down to about $330,000.
So it's
you do the math,
1/3.
yeah, you do the math, and it's nowhere near what we think, right? So you're between a rock and a hard place. So what do you do? When you look at the legislature in St. Paul that has had transportation as a main priority for the last at least 3 years, right? It was #1.
Can't get anything done.
And nothing happened.
Nothing.
And so this year, again, surplus change, hopefully things turn to at least give us some money back so that we can do a bit more on the system that we own.